Hey, everybody. Welcome back. The Common Good Podcast. We had a little technical difficulty, but we figured it out. And Josh Remillard, we are so glad to have you here with us. We know that you're running for Congress in the 13th Congressional District of North Carolina. We're such big fans of you, of your campaign, not just because we're fans of everybody who chooses to run in the United States, but especially those who want to make sure that Republicans don't keep control of the House of Representatives or get control of the House of Representatives. But we're really, really proud of your campaign and what you're up to. So we know that in some ways your campaign is more interesting to some people because of who is also running for that seat, someone who's a sitting congressperson who we think should not be a sitting congressperson anymore. But tell us a bit about your run and what's gotten you into this and all those good things.
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to thank you guys so much for having me on here. I really like talking with you guys. Yeah, for me, I guess if I were to pedal back here and start from the beginning, I was adopted at the age of 4. So I guess at that point in time, I sort of learned. I guess that's when the idea that life is a fight really started emerging, right? I lived in Goldsboro, Wilmington, all over the place, and then my grandfather worked for the State Department, and he and my grandmother were sort of enjoying, living out their golden years, traveling around the world. Mm-hmm. But then they saw that I needed them, and they made a lot of huge sacrifices and took me in. And I had the opportunity to travel around the world with them. I mean, I lived in places like Israel, Budapest, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, all over the place. But and when I grew up, my grandfather retired. We ended up living he retired in Wilmington, and even the jobs that I held were fights. I worked as a deckhand on a tugboat, as a piercer in a tattoo shop, and then later on down the line, after I got out of the Army, I ended up working as a bouncer. Wow. And I joined the Army in 2006. I was sort of milling about town, doing some odd and end jobs. Started paying attention to the news a little bit more, and I was noticing that the death toll was rising in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I just thought to myself, I started hating myself. Like, what am I doing here? Like, you see these men and women overseas, and they're fighting, they're sweating, they're dying, they're bleeding, and for what? They're bleeding for our country. And I just felt like I was cheating the system. So I went up to the recruiter and I was like, look, man, I don't want you to sell me anything. I just want you to put me in the infantry. And if you could put me in the fastest growing unit out of basic, let's do that. That's right. I need to be over there where the fight is. So he set me up. I served 8 years in the Army as an infantryman. I did 2 combat tours in Iraq. Honestly, when I got out of the Army, I think a lot of veterans will say this too. They'll agree that it's difficult to transition out of the military. Yeah. But I think it's specifically, or even especially, more difficult for a combat arms veteran to transition out of the military, because your sole purpose in life is to do one thing, and that's to hunt down the enemy and neutralize them. And so when I got out, I didn't have a mission anymore. I didn't have a purpose, and I had a dark period of time there. But eventually, I found this organization called Team Rubicon. And it's a veteran organization, and they train veterans on how to respond to natural disasters. So they got me my wildland firefighter certification. They helped me get that. They helped train me up for damage assessment, and then they deployed me to Florida after Hurricane Michael. And it's very cathartic. It's a very rewarding thing. Because I got to sit down with other veterans who experience the same kind of things that I experienced, and be sort of that ear for them to talk to, be that shoulder for them to lean on, and you get to talk about all of the issues and all the PTSD that you might have, and really just get over that, help yourself to overcome that. And then, even back home, I started volunteering with this organization, or a home that helps out homeless female veterans get back up on their feet. I wanted to be involved in my community as much as possible, because I felt like that was still the mission.
Yeah. Wow. Josh, let me ask you this. Is there something that has really brought you to the point of wanting to run for office? Like, was there something that was really like the critical thing of saying, "Hey, listen, this is too much. I've got to do this. I've got to throw my hat into the ring."
Well,
And
we're having all, for the frequent fans here of the live stream. Yesterday was also just bonkers. There was internet problems on one end. I kicked my cord out and unplugged something in the middle of a conversation. Josh has had trouble getting on and now is frozen. Well, look, let me make a couple of comments here about Josh. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, maybe we could show Josh's campaign video.
There you go.
Which tells his story a little bit.
Yeah, let's do that.
Can we make that happen?
A ruck. In the Army, it's when you carry all your gear for miles on end. And it's that weight you carry that makes you stronger. In many ways, I've been on a ruck my entire life. I bounced around from foster home to foster home until my grandparents were able to adopt me when I was 4 years old. I grew up in Wilmington, worked every job you can imagine. Deckhand on a tugboat, bouncer, I even worked in a tattoo shop. But in 2006, I made a decision that changed my life. I joined the United States Army. I was a gunner on an armored Humvee. And over 8 years and 2 deployments, when you get shot at and nearly blown up as much as my unit did, you make some really close friends. And Bryce was one of mine. When he got back from Afghanistan, he was battling PTSD in a bad way. He just wasn't the same. And we tried really hard to get him help. But one day his demons got the best of him, and he took his own life. I stayed with him until his body was taken away. It's one of the most painful memories that I have. And it's that memory that came flooding back when I saw Madison Cawthorn up on that stage on January 6th.
Wow, this crowd has some fight in it.
Spewing lies and helping incite an insurrection against a nation I fought to defend and my buddies died for. That's the moment I decided to run for Congress, because Madison Cawthorn doesn't give a damn about them. But the truth is, I'm not just running against him. I'm running against all the politicians that lied to us and got people killed that day because of it. Against the politicians that take a call from the CEO whenever their phone rings, but haven't listened to their constituents in years. Against all the politicians that sent us to war and didn't give a damn about our health when we came back. Look, people say a guy like me can't make it to Congress. I have tattoos. I don't sound like they do. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. And I sure don't know any rich people that can fund my campaign. But I know a traitor when I see one. And Madison Cawthorn is a traitor, a fraud, and a coward. So taking his seat in Congress, that's my new mission. The weight that I carry. And I know together, we can prove all the naysayers wrong. Let's go.
Well, that is Josh Remillard's video. Well done. So well articulated and impassioned. I want to ask you more about what you care about, but look, you've based your argument of why people should take you seriously because of the behavior of someone who's currently in Congress. And some people think that's not a good reason to run, right? They'll say to you, like, you shouldn't run just because you don't want someone else to be the congressperson. But I disagree with that. I think there's a lot of times where the people who sit in these seats of representation, they're the ones who make laws. They're the ones who don't represent constituencies. And if you want to see a change in our laws and you want to see a change in how constituents are represented, you have to change the representatives. Like, trying to ask politicians to act differently as politicians is a very difficult task. You're better off just swapping them out altogether. We talk here on the Common Good podcast a lot about faith voters and what should motivate them. Madison Cawthorn chooses to use faith as the rationale for so many of his ideas that are so harmful to people. Can you talk a bit about that, about how it strikes you when you hear him talking about issues of his own faith or trying to use the Christian faith that he attests to as the rationale for his behavior and bad policies?
Yeah, I think it's kind of disgusting. When I grew up in the Episcopalian church, and My grandparents always made sure that I respected other people and their views. They always trained me to have empathy for other people and to care wherever I can. Treat everyone with respect. And honestly, I see it as sort of I see it as fraudulent. His the way that he uses his religion, the way that he uses Christianity. I mean, well, I think it was back in October that he was telling Christian patriots to stand against and attack Democrats.
Yeah.
But I mean, like there are Democrats who are Christians,
Right.
and and it doesn't make any sense to me. That the fundamentals in my mind of what Christianity is to look out for your neighbor,
Yeah.
to give the loaves of bread, to be there when they're in their time of need, to have empathy. What part of Madison Cawthorn's platform or what he stands for, what part of any of that since January 6th embodies being a good Christian?
Yeah.
It's not right. It's not right what he's doing.
Yeah. And so many of the folks who are kind of religious conservatives, one of their, favorite things to do is to, talk about how terrible it is that God has been taken out of schools and God has been taken out of our culture, and so often want to bring God back in via, monuments and plaques and memorials to the 10 Commandments. And, when I think about the 10 Commandments, there's things like, kind of talking about what you were just talking about, using God's name in vain, which isn't necessarily about like the words you say and more about how you represent things and doing things in the name of God that aren't really of God. And another one being, not bearing false witness. And Madison Cawthorn has been one of the biggest proponents of the big lie, the completely fabricated story that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. And he continues to purport that and I'm just curious, like what your thoughts are about how that resonates with folks in North Carolina.
I think that enough people are, and this is across the political spectrum, enough people are upset and frustrated, and they've had enough of him. He comes over when he switched districts to the newly drawn 13th congressional district in North Carolina. His announcement was perceived as condescending. And to this day, he still parades around. He still weaponizes Christianity. He still does all these things, like you said, perpetuating the big lie, bearing false witness. There are enough people out there that are sick and tired of his antics, and they want to see him gone. I mean, and this spans the spectrum, even along conservative or even within conservative radio and news articles and journals. People are tired of him. He's not mature. He's not holding himself accountable. He doesn't really understand the gravity of his position. And it's time for someone that is that puts that selfless service above themselves and is willing to roll, keep your head down and roll your sleeves up and get the job done for people.
Yeah, two follow-ups on that, Josh. One is you talk about the immaturity, and it's absolutely there. He's most recently in the news for I'm sure you know this, but maybe not everybody knows this, but he's most recently in the news for polishing a gun during a Veterans Committee hearing. He's on a Zoom call in his congressional duties and, polishing his gun while he's doing it. It's just completely unprofessional and immature. But at the same time, and maybe folks don't know this, you alluded to this, the reality that all over the country, congressional districts are being redrawn. Everybody knows that. Well, what Madison Cawthorn has done is he is essentially running for office in a district that he does not live in. He's moving from the 14th congressional district of North Carolina to the 13th congressional district of North Carolina, because the 13th congressional district of North Carolina is, in many people's estimation, a safer Republican seat. It was drawn in a way that Republican, it's going to be a safe Republican seat, is so people think. And there was a state senator who was lined up to run for that seat, and Madison Cawthorn kind of nudged his way in and said, "Oh no, I'm gonna run in this district." Now, Josh, you were running against Madison Cawthorn in North Carolina 14, and you followed him into the 13th district. Is that right? And tell us a little bit about why you did that. Like, what's your take on his decision to move to the 13th district? Not move literally, but to move and run for office in the 13th district. And then why there are other Democrats in the race in the 13th. You were the one who followed him into the 14th. Why was that?
Yeah, the reason I followed him is the reason I got in this race. I saw all the events that went down on January 6th. Again, I was sort of just milling about the house, doing some odd and ends around some chores here and there. And I flipped on the news and I saw what was going on. And I just remember the switch flipping in my head and just being so angry, screaming at the TV. And my wife had come home from work and she was like, "What are you yelling at?" And I'm like, look what's happening to our country right now. Like, this is our nation's capital. This is what service members raise their right hand and oath of enlistment to defend our symbol of freedom, our Constitution, our American way of life. And then this is what Madison Cawthorn is doing right now. He's encouraging people to take over our nation's capital. And that made me think back to also having lost friends overseas. And I lost a really, really close friend of mine due to PTSD when he came back home after his deployment. And I mean, that's a really painful memory. And, thinking about all that and thinking about how people sacrifice their lives for our country. And he was just walking all over it, just spitting in the face of all that sacrifice. So that was why I got in this race, is because I've served our country and I wanted to continue serving it again. But also, he needs to be removed from office. Mm-hmm. He's an existential threat to our country and our democracy, our republic, our way of life. I wanted to hold him accountable for those things. So when he moved districts, I thought to myself, and I spoke with my wife about it, and I said, the reason I got in this race is to hold him accountable. He is fleeing from his constituents in NC 11 or the now newly drawn NC 14, and he's trying to run away from his problems. And that's not right. That's not becoming of a leader. That's not becoming of a congressional representative. So, just like in the Army, when we were deployed and the enemy moved, we followed suit. And I decided that I was going to pick up and chase him down to that district because I did not want him to escape his problems. He needs to be held accountable for everything he's done.
Josh, how can people be engaged with you in this? There's people, Trish wrote in the chat, boy, if I lived in North Carolina, I'd vote for him, for you. And people, I'm sure, will feel that way, both because they all, they agree with you that Madison Cawthorn should not be a representative in the United States Congress. We have this saying around here, we believe every person is the beloved child of God, the light of the world, the salt of the earth. So is Madison Cawthorn. But not every light of the world should be a representative from the state of North Carolina to the federal government. He needs to let his little light, leave the room of the U.S. Capitol. So it's not only personal, it's just this person should not be in this role. Mm-hmm. A lot of people will feel that way and will want to help you. What's the best way for them to help you? What they can obviously go to joshremillard.com. What do you need if someone says, hey, what could I do?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely need help. The financial assistance, be able to compete against Madison Cawthorn. I mean, because he has a very good fundraising machine, and to be competitive and to kick him out of office, we need that kind of help so that way we can continue, combating his erroneous message. The other thing is, volunteers. I want to build the biggest team that we can build, so that way when it comes down time for us to write letters, to make phone calls, to do all the stuff that needs to be done to get voters out there voting. We need a big team to help us do that. I think those are the two biggest things that we need.
And some of that volunteering can be done from wherever someone lives. They can make phone calls, they can send letters, they can do postcard campaigns. There's a number of things that people can do when they're interested in this. You're running as a Democrat. Your ideas resonate with the people of your district, but politics is so much about identity. Are there any things that you need to really address to ask these voters in North Carolina to vote for a Democrat? Even if they might agree with you, it's just hard for people to feel like they're switching political teams. We're in sort of one of these, a lot of people use the sports metaphor for their political identities, and it's really hard for them to feel like they're now going to be on the other side. How is that going with you, and what are you doing to address those issues there in your?
Yeah, I think that people will vote for a Democrat if they sort of see themselves in you, if they understand that you're someone who has served this country, who will serve this country, and you will always try to do the right thing. And that's something that I've always tried to do. In the military, I've already fought and bled for this country once in my enlistment, and I want to continue doing that again. I got out of the Army to continue serving my communities.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I think that, like, at the end of the day, yeah, there will be people on the other side of the aisle who perhaps disagree with some of the ideas that I have. And I acknowledge that. And I'm not a person who's going to cram ideology down anyone's throat. Bottom line, at the end of the day, there are issues that we all have anxiety over, that we want to see resolved in our country. So I believe that the best way to solve those problems is to look at the entire picture, the entire facet, all the facets of the diamond. Look at all of them, find the appropriate solution, and execute. And I'm hoping that people see that. Two of the biggest things for me in this campaign, obviously we need to get over the hurdle of Madison Cawthorn. But two of the biggest things beyond that is making sure that our veterans are treated fairly, making sure that the VA hospitals are updated to the appropriate age of at least your private hospitals. Secondly is improving our economy. I think that's a huge thing that we need to do. We need to be able to bring jobs back to our district, our state, get people proud of working again. Continue improving our infrastructure, because that's how you strengthen the rest of our economy. And then I guess you could say along with that is looking at our agricultural industry. For us out here, that's a huge staple for us. But beyond that, it's also securing and making safe one of the most sacred things that we have in our society, and that's the polling stations. The ease with which people can go vote is so dramatically important, and making sure that people can vote, making sure that they're not when they go to the polling station. Those are huge things. That's fundamentally what service members fight for, is the most sacred tradition that we have as Americans. So I want to make sure that those things are taken care of and secured.
Well, I sure hope you have a chance to do that as the congressman from North Carolina's 13th congressional district. Josh, thanks for running, and thanks for being here today, and for sharing your life, with this country and with the people of North Carolina.
Thank you.
Hey, all the best to you, man. Hey, thanks for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, whether it's in one video stream or we have to do it in 3 or 4. By golly, we're not going to be stopped. So it'd be great to see y'all around here tomorrow. We do our Faith Day on Wednesdays. Be glad to have you along. Rob, anything else?
No. But
Dan, you good?
I just encourage everybody to head over to joshrimillard.com and support Josh's campaign.
Get on the list. Get signed up.
Yep.
Let's take care of this Cawthorn issue. Dan, anything else from you?
Nope, we're good.
All right. Hey, thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.